Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're looking forward to a very engaging program. I'm Laura Freeman, the membership manager at the Bruce Museum. I know we have a good number of members joining us, so thank you very much for your continued support and hello out there. This weekend is actually a member appreciation weekend at the Bruce Museum. We have a new exhibition opening, Emily Mason exhibition. We have 2 member preview days, so hopefully we'll see you out there at the museum. And we have to thank a very important sponsor of these Bruce Experiences programs, Bank of America. They have created a little video that I'm going to share with you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carolyn Westerberg, Private Client Advisor in the Private Bank at Bank of America. My colleagues at Bank of America and I are honored to partner with the Bruce Museum to bring you tonight's special presentation of Behind the Scenes with Luc Hardy. We are proud to build on our long-standing partnership with the Bruce Museum in developing ways to offer virtual experiences and thought leadership events this year and into 2021. As many of you know, Bank of America has a special affinity for the arts and recognizes the important role art plays in opening our minds and inspiring and connecting us. And Bank of America understands the importance of the Bruce Museum as a key driver of cultural vibrancy in our community. Bank of America has provided sponsorship of Electric Paris, Andy Warhol exhibits, Summer with the Averys, Mayanas River Gorge photography exhibit, and most recently, the Bruce Experiences presentation of the Kimono Showcase. Thank you to Whitney Rosenberg and to Robert Walterstorff and everyone at the Bruce Museum for their incredible dedication, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to be part of tonight's exciting presentation.
Thank you, Carolyn and Bank of America. We're so grateful for your support of these programs. It really enables us to broaden the audience that we can share these virtual programs with. I'm going to pass things along to my colleague, Dr. Daniel Sepka, to get tonight's program started. Enjoy.
Thanks, Laura, and thank you all for signing up tonight. It's good to see so many people and so many familiar names. Although we can't be with you in person, we're glad we can share this experience. And tonight is really a great pleasure, and I truly mean that, to introduce our speaker, someone I've grown to know more closely as a member of our Bruce Museum Science Committee and a part of the Greater Bruce family, Luc Hardy. And Luc is doing us a really great favor by coming to us live from the Azores, where he's actually on a boat with 3 other people doing some preliminary research for another documentary. So it's almost midnight where he is, and so we really appreciated him coming to us from thousands of miles away and several hours in the future. So Luc Hardy is an inventor, a filmmaker, and environmental advocate, and he's traveled the globe pretty much pole to pole, from the North to South Pole, making documentaries about research, exploration, and most importantly, the challenges that we face in these times of environmental degradation and climate change, and how we can address those. So Luc is the president of Sajax Investment and Management Advisory Firm, a member of the Explorers Club of New York, actually, sorry, a fellow of the Explorers Club of New York, and also author of many books and films, including Arctica Incognita and The Pursuit of Endurance on the Shoulders of Shackleton, including 2 new films, which we'll be talking about tonight. So tonight is a special event. It's not a standard lecture or film screening, and here's how it's going to work. We're going to show you some clips, some footage from 2 unreleased documentaries that Luc Hardy is working on. One is called Sargassum, and the other is Clonamol. And what we'll do is play those clips, and then Luc will give a little bit of an overview, and we're going to turn it over to you. And so the main part of this is to have a discussion, not to just have a lecture. And so if you all are familiar with Zoom, there's a little chat button at the bottom of the screen. You can press that, and you can type in a question, and that's how we're going to do our Q&A. So if you type your question in there after we watch the clips, of course, Luc will do his best to answer anything you want to know about where these are filmed, how the filmmaking works, the science, any aspect of it, including the actual expedition, the research, or how it gets made into a documentary. So with that, I'll turn things over to Luc. And I'd say that we shall give you a nice round of applause, but no one will be able to hear it. You can type clap into the little chat if you like.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for attending. Just as an introduction, as Danielle just mentioned, I'm in the Azores right now, actually doing some scouting and reconnaissance work for a documentary which will talk about the Azores in the context of climate change, the environment, biodiversity, especially looking at for example, whales and how the mix of whales are present in the Azores and their migration routes and whatnot has changed over time, in part due to the warming of waters and the change of currents and all this. So we're looking at a number of things, biodiversity and the environment in general, also some sustainability issues and permaculture and what people are doing here in this archipelago, which is, most people kind of know the name, but don't really know where it is and what it is about. So we hopefully gonna do a good work next year in doing a full-length documentary and talking about all these issues. I discovered actually myself that I'm in a little port here on a Terceira Island, one of the 9 islands of the Azores, and very close to the US base of the Azores. And I didn't know that there was still a base there with a couple of hundred soldiers. So here I am, and I think Danielle would want to start with the currently being made and produced a documentary about Sargassum, which is a brown algae that I, discovered the existence of about a year and a half ago, doing some research and preparing myself to do a transatlantic sailing. And I got very intrigued by that subject, and started to dig deeper, and gave me the idea of organizing a full-size expedition and a documentary. And what you're going to see is kind of a teaser of what the documentary might be about. So it's a work in progress, and I myself have a lot of questions, which we're going to ask during the transatlantic sailing we're going to do next year, and working with scientists and others. And maybe I'll let Danielle show about 2-3 minutes of images, and then we can talk more about the subject, which is fascinating, and some negative, some might be positive issues, but mostly impacting the Caribbean and Central America, Gulf of Mexico, and also Western Africa. So quite a big, serious issue for countries which unfortunately don't have typically a lot of money to deal with these disasters.
The original beach line before the Sargassum brown tide arrived. Sargassum brown tide eroded the beach between 10 and 20 meters.
Les marins pêcheurs ne pouvaient plus sortir leur bateau parce que c'était complètement rempli. Ça a créé une situation très douloureuse.
Les sargasses en décomposition, après 48 heures, contiennent toute une série de gaz. Il y a 2 de ces gaz qui sont très toxiques. C'est un problème majeur de santé publique.
J'ai dû quitter aussi cette maison que j'ai faite pour ma retraite parce qu'il me disait il faut proposer un autre air à vos poumons.
Quand j'ai fait mes enquêtes sur le terrain, la première question que les interlocuteurs posaient, c'était justement comment c'est arrivé. Une question qui génère en fait beaucoup d'inquiétudes parce que le comment veut dire aussi comment on peut agir, qui peut agir. Et donc, il y a une imputabilité en fait de la responsabilité. Donc, le Brésil va être responsable, l'Afrique va être responsable, donc les polluants vont être responsables.
In the future, we don't know how much sargassum we're going to get because this is a new phenomenon and we have only a few years of that. So we don't know what's going to happen with sargassum in the future, but it doesn't appear as if it's going to disappear anytime soon.
On ne peut pas agir directement sur la source des sargasses. Il faut absolument trouver des stratégies pour continuer à vivre avec. Donc, soit faire de la valorisation, soit inventer des techniques qui permettront de les récolter. Il faut vraiment réussir à introduire ces sargasses dans le quotidien et à en faire une ressource plutôt que ça reste une nuisance.
Yeah, I hope the quality of the film came through when it was filtered through my internet connection, because it's beautiful footage. So Luc, I don't know if you'd like to say a few words about Sargassum, and then we can let people start asking questions.
Yeah, so as you can see, it's just a physicality of it, what you see along the beaches here in the Caribbean, but it's the same issue in Western Africa, in a few countries there that we talk less about because the impact has been mostly felt by, the tourism industry and hotels. So these are the ones who are raising the issues and have the means to treat the problems, but the problems are all over these countries, and fishermen cannot physically take their boat out of their port or beaches just because they cannot go through these masses of algae, and they cannot go fishing. So there are a lot of economic, social issues for the average population, in addition to the tourism industry and others. And there are some, solutions that local governments are working on, like trying to capture these algae, at a distance, and also right when it gets on the beaches themselves, or they have special boats that you've seen try to literally swallow this sargassum and bring them to shore and dry them and somehow treat them. There are some, possible ways to use them, and in bricks, as you have seen, or fertilizers and diverse products, but it's kind of a nascent industry, which is itself a subject which is of big debate, because local populations are worried that if in a way, entrepreneurs find solutions, about what to do with sargassum, that problems might not be treated as well at the source, because they will see that as a resource, and then they will let the sargassum invade these bays and beaches to be used for transformation. So it's a whole complex subject, which makes it, in a way interesting, although devastating for quite a few people.
So I had no idea that this was such a large issue, and I love the little graphic of a brick being made out of it. So I think people can start typing in questions onto the chat panel. We have one already from Harvey Brownstein, who's asking, can sargassum be converted into anything useful? And I think you maybe tell us about the brick, but I think you had told me something else it was being made into that surprised me when we were talking before.
So it can be made in a number of things. There are a few issues depending on where it is sourced, and you know, there are issue of arsenic, which often is contained in sargassum, heavy metals sometimes. In part of Martinique and Guadeloupe, there is some chlordecone, which is a substance, pesticide substance, which was used many years ago and has been discontinued since, but which is still present in there. So if you're going to use sargassum as a fertilizer, which, you know, in theory could be done, can you really do it if the sargassum itself contains substances which might be, you know, negative for the rest of the chain of agriculture and whatnot. But yeah, we've seen people doing a bunch of things, cosmetics and creams and shoes, bricks, even people in Martinique doing kind of coffins made of sargassum, which would, you know, presumably disintegrate over time. So it would be kind of environmentally friendly in a way. So yeah, people are getting quite creative about what to do with them.
How do you make a coffin out of seaweed or algae? Is it? I guess it biodegrades fairly easily, so it's like a nice earth-friendly. That's interesting. I never would have guessed that. So we saw that little video of the rotor going over and scooping it up. Was that harvesting it for use, or was that more to clean it off so it wasn't going to block a harvest?
Yeah, actually, this particular one was filmed in Dominican Republic near Punta Cana, where there are, you know, pricey resorts which have the means to do two things. First, to put a line of floats and buoys to prevent the sargassum to reach the beaches. So the, you know, white sand beaches are still okay for tourists. But also they have the means to rent to hire these big equipment to capture the sargassum, which has been retained by these float lines. And these are expensive, and obviously the little, you know, fisherman port anywhere in the Caribbean cannot afford these, but tourist resorts can do that. So they capture the sargassum, and then they kind of compress it in in bales, and then drop that in, you know, depending on the community, the town. For unfortunately, sometimes it's just discharged on land somewhere, and in other cases, it's used as primary raw material for a chain of a transformation, which can be again, you know, kind of a fertilizer. They call it more like supplement. So you see a bunch of very interesting uses.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'd like to see a piece of sargassum paper. We have a question from Kate. Does the sargassum have effects on animals other than humans? Obviously, it's harmful to humans with some of those things like arsenic that are being outgassed, but is it a conservation issue for any other species?
A conservation issue? Well, I'm not sure. I respond that two ways. I understand the question. Sargassum can be used, well, again, depending on its content. If it's
I think he means is it causing any problems for like fish species or marine mammals?
Yeah. Okay. So that's the other way I understood the question. So thanks for clarifying that for me. Yes. So well, sargassum can be an issue in different ways. It can affect if it's, on a seashore and covering a reef, a coral reef, well, it will prevent the light, sunlight coming into the reef. So here you go, your reef is going to be affected, coral is going to be affected. It's a major problem. As you've seen in the teaser, we worked with scientists in Puerto Morelos in Mexico, and you see a piece of a beach which in 4 years has lost 70 meters of beach because the sargassum is preventing the light to reach the plants which are, embedded in the sand and prevent the sand to move away when there are waves and storms. So if you cut the light, no more plants, no more seagrass, and your sand is loose, and storms come on land, and they just get rid of the beach basically. So that's also a major issue there. It's also affecting the definitely the mix of fish that the preliminary data we gathered by interviewing is that it's been mostly degrading the possibility of the fishing, the quantities and the mix of fish. So it's not good for the fish industry. Actually, the fish industry in Barbados, fly fish has been really affected by this sargassum issue. In a few cases, we've seen, some fishermen kind of happy because, these big mats of sargassum create an opportunity for fish and sea life to congregate around these mats, and that make it easier for them to fish a certain species of sea life. But globally, again, this preliminary research shows that it's not good overall for the.
I think in a related question, Cynthia asks, is this the same algae that's in the famous Sargasso Sea that's important to sea turtles or eels, or is this something different? Is that
so I'm a scientist in a way, but not an oceanographer or sea life scientist. So that's a caveat here. But what we understand so far, and we'll do more research and let the scientists speak in the actual documentary, it looks like the sargassum that we see in the middle of the Atlantic, and which is kind of coming every year to the Caribbean, initially came from, well, first was observed only in 2010, 2011, so not even 10 years ago.
Wow.
And that apparently, some sargassum from the Sargasso Sea kind of escaped from the north, Gulf Stream, northeast, and came back southwest and southeast, part towards Africa, part toward Middle Atlantic, and then every year this new Sargasso Sea, as it's sometimes called, develops and generates, proliferates and generates new mats and kind of invade the Western Atlantic, typically starting March, April, and with a peak in June, July, August, and then it kind of fades out in September, October. So it looks like from, 1-2 papers I've seen, it looks like it's coming from the original Sargasso Sea, but it was never really observed in such quantities anyway in the middle of the Atlantic and in the Caribbean and Western Africa.
Yeah, so that's great. So the next question is from Diane Burko, who asks, when was it first sighted? And I think you just explained that it was 2010 or 11, so it's relatively new to be seeing it causing these issues. She wants to know if you could share any information on the evolution of its growth, and may it be correlated to rising ocean temperatures, or is there something else that's kind of triggering it to go, out of control, basically?
Yeah, well, there are, years bigger than others. This year, 2020, seems to be, less than 2018 was a big year. So there have been big years, and but the first few years, people thought it was just a kind of a freak event, but now most people think it's here to stay. So every year there'll be more or less, there'll be record years, but it's here. It looks like, again, I don't want to conclude anything too much, and I'm not even sure that scientists, specialists can conclude anything right now, but it looks like the warming climate change, the warming ocean waters, the changing currents have an aggravating impact on the phenomenon, but also the nutriments in the ocean coming from, and people have blamed the Amazon and the Congo River, and I think from what I hear it's mostly overblown, even if there is some of that, but it's certainly the human generated nutriments into the rivers and oceans and the ocean have been a big cause of the aggravation of the presence of sargassum in the ocean, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. I think we'll take one more question about this, and then we're going to play the second clip. And of course, you're welcome to ask more questions about this, the sargassum, as well as we move into the second part. But this is an anonymous question, asking, what are the harmful gases that are coming out of this algae as it's the ones that are affecting humans who are nearby? I think there's a woman who said she had to leave her home because it was affecting her breathing.
Yes, so it's mostly hydrogen, sulfuric hydrogen, which is definitely toxic. It smells, rotten egg smell, as most people know. So at least you know that you are smelling something which is dangerous. It's really bad if you breathe too much of it. It can be very detrimental to your health, to your lungs, and some people have died from it. In Brittany, where we have, I happen to be from Brittany in France, where we have the green algae problem. Animals and horses and boars and a jogger has died. So it is dangerous. We've actually interviewed this lady in the teaser, who is a retired lady, and built a house near the beach for her retirement, and she cannot live in a house half the time just because the fume, the gases from the decomposition of sargassum are just too hot to handle. So it is a major health, public health issue for these localities.
So we're going to move on to the second video, but I just had one more question that everyone might want to hear answered. This is from Scotland now, and he said he did not see the film trailer on the PAX Arctica website. I believe, is the trailer available publicly now?
No, it's not, because it's not really a trailer for a film which is existing. It's more of a teaser to get interest in the film. So it's not for public distribution. But by the way, if anybody in the audience is interested in bringing ideas, views, comments, introductions of people to interviews in whichever country affected by this, or introduction to scientists, I will happily take these conversations in the next few days after the webinar.
Yeah, so that's great. I knew the answer to that question, but I wanted to let you say yourself. So this is unreleased, so you're seeing it here first, which is pretty cool.
Good.
And yeah, you know, when the film is out there, I'm sure it will be on your website and other places, and then you can see the whole thing. But that's sometime in the future. So I'm going to play a clip from another one of Luc's unreleased or incompleted documentaries, and this one is called Clonamol, and this is about animal cloning, and you'll see some really amazing stuff. I think we all remember Dolly the sheep, but things have come a long way since then. So 1 second, I'm just going to share my screen again.
You probably remember Dolly the sheep, the first cloned mammal ever created. It was in 1996. Since then, cloning has come of age, opening many exciting possible applications. This is especially true in the sport of polo, where cloning has been pushed more than in any other discipline.
This one is a newborn of the clone of Guajira. They are born like super strong, super well. Every year we get more number of clones, and that is very improving of the technology that is getting even better with the years, you know.
So we clone her, and now we take embryos from her and embryos from her. So we have 2 mothers, and we will have 4 mothers of a super top bloodline, you know. This is one of the benefits for cloning, you know, that you can multiply your fabrics. Some people think that cloning stops the improving, but with this you can see we multiply the mothers so we can have better chances to improve the mother, the original one.
Those clones, and they are amazing. Those machine. I played the original like 6-7 years ago, and they are more or less the same. They are incredible. Yeah.
So we are in avant-garde, we are at the top of the game compared to any other sport. I think we need to organize it, to order it, to rule it.
Polo has its origins in the early stages of forced domestication. Archaeologists have been searching for traces of the first domesticated horses for decades. Technology has come to a stage where we can write the DNA of ancient horses into the genomes of developing embryos.
Biotechnology is endless, and some are working even to take back the life of extinguished species. And I think gene-edited edition for even sport animals is going to be the future as well.
Is this one way to compensate for loss of biodiversity across species? One may ask, what could be the limit? Will humans be next?
The ominous ending. So, Luc, if you'd like to speak just a little bit about the Clonamol documentary, and then we'll go back to our little question and answers again.
Yeah, so yeah, totally different subject. I got intrigued by this subject. I happen to be, you know, I've been riding for 50 years or so, and I happen to be a polo player. I've been for 30 years. So got into this subject about 10 years ago when cloning in Argentina in the polo world started to to develop, thanks to you know, basically the best player in the world there. And as a curious you know, engineer, tech lover, and documentary filmmaker, I got really intrigued and started to dig in and thought, wow, there is a wonderful subject to deal with here. It's just amazing. And so here too, we are developing a documentary on that subject. We started to shoot in Argentina, in France, where you saw the scientist, in the Altai Mountains, where they, scientists discover 4,000 to 5,000 years old horses remains, and we're trying to do a story which will look at the origin of domestication of horses, and all the way to where horses are today, what they're used for, and what the next phase of diversity, biodiversity, and I wanted to address this in a neutral way. Some people will say, "Oh, if you clone, you're going to limit biodiversity." And but on the other hand, as the Martin Barrantes, the head of this lab in Argentina, explained, it's also a way to create more diversity faster, because with the same, so it's literally the same, almost the same mare, copies of the same mare, you can breed them with different males, and then expand the diversity faster. So it's a very interesting subject. Not even talking about the augmentation of clones, which is another fascinating subject, where you can take a clone and then manipulate the genomes to get presumably faster, better horses. And if you link that to humans, wow, it's just mind-boggling what fortunately or unfortunately can be done. And it's probably better to talk about it now in the form of a film and documentary than to see the actual results when it's too late. So
yeah, I've always been worried that some of my descendants would be the last uncloned or unaltered people, and then they'd be falling behind because everyone else would have jellyfish genomes and something so they can go and fly. So I have a question myself. You, in the film, it said that they had the same mare with 4 different mothers. Did that mean that they were raising identical embryos from different carriers, like mothers who would just gestate them, or was that they were actually taking the DNA from a male horse and combining it with 4 different females to create this, so they would not actually, they would be kind of cloning half of the animal, really?
No, the way it's done in Argentina, where there is a horse industry, literally. So, the lab would take a oversight of a recently dead mare. They would take out the the DNA from the oversight, and in the lab replace it with the full DNA of the super polo pony, polo horse that you want to clone. And so you put this DNA in the egg, and you now have an oversight egg with the DNA, exact copy of the DNA of the horse you want to clone. And you in the lab, it takes about 8 days. You let the a cell divide and become a embryo. And because typically the sperm entering the oversight, it's kind of creating the division. In that case, it's not happening that way. You need a little electric spark to make it happen, but it works very well, very high success rate. And after 10 days, then this embryo is inserted into mares, surrogate mothers, and you can make literally as many copies as you want. So let's say you take 10 surrogate mothers, and 11 months later, you have 10 clones, which are pretty much the same as the original. I mean, there are always, as we know, we sure get mothers, slight differences because all the mothers are not exactly the same, so there are some nuances. But given the fact that they are raised in exactly the same conditions, fed the same way, you get a pretty much, a very similar copies. Actually, you saw the Juan Martin Nero in the interview after a semi-final game 2 years ago in Palermo in Buenos Aires, saying, I wrote the original a couple of years ago, and Quartetera, this copy of the original Quartetera Mare is just like the original. So these clones having been raised the same way and fed the same way and trained the same way by the same trainers, domadors, and whatnot, end up having pretty much copies of the original, to the point where the best ponies at the Bierto again in Argentina 2 years ago, last year and 2 years ago, were actually clones. So the most valuable ponies were clones of these famous super horse.
So I have a kind of more of a, I guess this is more of a sporting question, but I guess you can have a team where all the horses are clones.
Yep.
Do you ever have a match where the horse clones are playing against other versions of themselves? Well, or are they kind of owned by different stables, I suppose?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in theory you could, and the regulations in Argentina would allow that, because you can play with clones of ponies in Argentina, but it's this mare Quartetera, which now has been copied by this particular farm and this particular player and team, they're not going to give away or sell their clones at any price to the opposite team. But the others are starting to do the same thing, and they're going to clone their best ponies as well, and we'll see where it goes.
Can have a boring Kentucky Derby where all the horses are the same.
Yeah, well, I think to that I would say, I mean, it would be fairly stupid to have 10 clones racing, and there would not be fun in that. But in polo, still you need a human being on top of the horse. Not that you don't need a jockey for racing, but in polo the player is super important. So you will never have a case where, unless you start to clone players.
Yeah, I was thinking of that too.
Yeah, you will never have a case where where it's on that way.
Interesting. Okay, we have a question here. That DNA sequencing used to be incredibly expensive. I remember, I think the first human genome took billions of dollars, and now you can clone the genome of an animal for, I think a few $1,000s, and do it pretty rapidly too. I think it took years and years, and now you can do it in a couple of days. So do you ever imagine cloning becoming cheap enough that it's accessible to the general public? And I think what people might be thinking here is, cloning pets, which I believe is, I think there's some celebrities who have had the same dog 7 or 8 times. So do you see this becoming a situation where, your cat gets run over and you break out the clone and you get the next one of the same cat?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there is a niche industry of cloning pets, especially dogs. It's done in several countries. One doing that the best and the cheapest seems to be South Korea. And celebrities and others, less famous, but Barbara Streisand and
that's what I was thinking.
Diane von Furstenberg, and these people have had their beloved dogs cloned, and the costs tend to be between $50,000 and $100,000 to clone an animal like this today. It also happens to be the cost of cloning a polo pony. If you want to clone your horse for whatever use, in Argentina today, you would pay between $50,000 and $100,000. And this cost is going to go down. It was, twice the price a few years ago. It's definitely going down. And as importantly, with a success rate, which is close to 100%. So it's at the beginning, when you had a gestation and a clone, there was more like a 50% chance of going to term, and now it's pretty much close to 100%, like any normal pregnancy.
Yeah. So this may be a specialized question. I don't know if I should be asking now, but I seem to remember back when they were first cloning the sheep that there was some issue where if you continued to clone an animal, I don't know if it was some types of substitutions in the DNA or telomeres or something, but it seemed like you couldn't just clone the same individual an unlimited time because there's some degradation of the DNA. Is that something they've worked around, or is that still true?
Yeah, I don't know. That's certainly going to be part of our, digging into that subject. I wouldn't have
The way I understood, I think it was that the telomeres, like, so you basically, if you took the DNA from an older animal, the clone would have less of a lifespan for that reason. And I don't know if that's something that's been addressed or not, but it seems like that horse has been cloned a lot of times, and maybe they each live. I wonder if they each have the same lifespan or not. But
what I've observed, seen, or heard is that you could clone this, in that example, this Quartetera horse indefinitely, and they would not be degradation, and the cloned individuals would have typically a normal life, and would die from their old age or whatever. Now, cloning of cloning, that I don't know what the end result would be, and I don't know that people have really done that yet, and if there would be a need to, because it's so easy to start from the original clone.
Right, yeah, to start from the original instead of not taking a new copy each time. I guess that would be like a photocopier over and over, but
right.
Just use the original. Okay, I have a question from James here. He said, "Is there any division in the polo community over whether this should be done, or is it kind of universally accepted in Argentina?"
There's definitely, in Argentina, there are the two camps. Typically, the Cambiaso family, who's done this cloning and started this cloning process and for many years now, and the more like the PRS camp, which is the arch enemy and competition, and they're more saying, well, let's nature guide this, and if you clone, you're not going to get maybe better than this Quartetera horse, and which is not quite true, because if you, as Martin Barrantes was explaining in the teaser, now you have actually a multiple fabric, and you can actually cross faster with more stallions, male horses, and get more diversity and more chances of getting an individual, which is even better. So there is that. And actually the others who for years have said, no, we should not clone, let's nature continue its course. Well, I hear from the grapevine that they are actually now strongly considering cloning their best horses themselves. So that's going to be an interesting part of the story, is a rivalry between these clans, and actually one kind of maybe doing what the leader is doing now.
Interesting. We have a question here about, and I think this was mentioned briefly in the film, about de-extinction, so to speak. So is it possible to clone animals like passenger pigeons from, obviously they're not alive now, but to take DNA from a museum specimen and recreate these animals, so to speak.
Yeah. So again, I'm certainly not a specialist, but of this. Interestingly enough, I was in Siberia in September, looking at this subject of the cloning mammoth and all these issues, and the passenger pigeon is an issue. So are you kind of resuscitating a species, taking, old DNA from a, in a museum somewhere, and can you take that DNA and put it in a kind of a oversight of a live common pigeon, and which would be the closest, whatever the closest species of pigeon would be today, since the passenger pigeon has totally disappeared. And then you would have a passenger pigeon, coming from a pigeon. So what kind of animal would you get? I mean, same for the mammoth. I know George Church was very famous at Harvard for working on the genome of the mammoth. Seems to be very close to being able not to resuscitate a mammoth, because it's probably never going to be possible, but maybe taking the genome of an Asian elephant, which is closest to the mammoth and the African elephant, and inserting, genes specific to the mammoth into the genome of the Asian elephants, and then get this into a female elephant, and get some elephant mammoth kind of a animal. But then what do you do with this animal? I mean, this animal would not want to live in in a warm part of Asia, would want to live in northern Siberia. So how do you do this? It gets very complicated, certainly interesting and complicated, but it's a fascinating area of research for sure. And it's not, and I think it's not, we should not denigrate that as it's scientists playing, Frankenstein and all that. It's really very serious and positive science from what I've seen, and which can turn out to be quite useful. And it should obviously not be an excuse to not try to save the existing biodiversity by not destroying, forest and environments which allow the biodiversity to stay as it is and to develop. So let's not use that as an excuse to do nothing today.
I think we have no room for the animals that are left, and now where are we going to put the mammoth that we just made? P.T. Barnum would love this. I can see some character making these and having a zoo somewhere in Russia or something. It's a really ethical question about animals, about humans. I think that if you said you can change my genome right now and it will keep me forever getting cancer, everyone would say yay. But if you said I'm going to make you much stronger and a foot taller than big, I don't know. So it's really a very fraught field, and I think something we'll be dealing more and more with in the next couple decades. So we have one more question. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying the augmentation is definitely an interesting subject. Actually, as a footnote, and we're looking into this in the Polar World. This lab in particular has looked at not only cloning, but augmenting the clones by maybe inserting the genes which presumably code for speed. You take a super fast racehorse, you take the right genes, you insert them into the genome of that super polo pony, And then here you go, you get a even faster super polo pony. But then maybe the horse is going too fast for its bone structure. Maybe it's going to put the player in danger. So, you know, what do we do? But it's anyway, it's forbidden in for now, at least in a polo world. So it's not happening. But technically, it's possible. It's possible.
Yeah, it's kind of like cheating on breeding animals, which we've been doing for millennia. So speaking of cheating, here's a question. Has anyone ever tried to steal tissue from someone else's horse to make their own copy? I wonder if you get caught when the horse comes out looking like the one you copied.
Yeah, not that I know, and not that I've heard. In a horse business, it's a fairly, whether it's polo or racehorses, it's fairly controlled. First, I think people have a real ethics. They love horses, and you know, they care about their horses. And the polo cloning is done totally in the open, and we know how it's done. You can visit the labs. You go tomorrow, you have to visit the lab. They have a board where they say which ponies are being cloned now. So it's not at all a secretive industry to the country. Now, yes, bad things can happen, but eventually you would know, because any horse you buy at these prices for competition, would have a DNA analysis, and you would quickly find out that that there is an issue, that he's been stolen or something.
Yeah, it's like stealing.
Yeah, you just need to clone. Actually, the way it started, Adolfo Cambiaso, it took a little piece of just the neck of his horse, a little chunk, half a teaspoon, and froze it for a while, and then when the technology was ready, took that literally little piece of meat and a tiny sample of that, and that was enough to clone. So yes, in theory, you can steal a piece of an animal and clone it.
Half a teaspoon of horse makes me hungry.
Yeah.
So we're approaching our 8 o'clock and Luc's midnight. So I think we'll wrap up. But I guess one question that maybe a lot of people would like to know is, when do you think we can expect to see these two films being released, and where might they first appear?
Yeah, they both probably starting. Obviously, we've been delayed in 6 months, 9 months, like everybody else in whatever they're doing. So it's probably going to be second half of next year, and probably not sooner, because we need to do some more filming early next year. Certainly a vaccine would help to move around. COVID vaccine, I mean. So yeah, second half of next year, and then it depends, which streaming platform or channel would buy it in which country, and but for the friends of Bruce Museum, certainly would make it available one way or the other. So yeah, stay tuned.
Thank you. That would be a treat. We'll have something to look forward to.
Exciting.
And hopefully we can all get back to our travels in a couple months as these vaccines come out. Okay, well, thank you very much, Luc. We really appreciate you taking the time, especially given that you're out at sea and far away and in the future, as we said. So we appreciate that. Thanks to all of our Bruce Museum members for joining us today, and thanks to Bank of America for supporting the series. So we'll see you all next time. We do one of these every month, so please check in again. And someone's texting me, I'm going to steal a horse chunk. So we better watch out. Hide your horses' necks. All right, good night, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Good night from the Azores. Goodbye. Thanks.